Hi, welcome to the NAPE YouTube site. Now last month I travelled to a large primary school about PLGs or Pupil Leadership Groups. Now this school has adopted pupil leadership groups as a strategy to engage pupils as much as possible. This is a very large London school and has organised 22 pupil leadership groups covering the 22 values described by Julie Rees, formerly known as Julie Duckworth, and referenced below. Can I also recommend you watch an excellent video called Values-Based Education, the beating heart of primary education, presented by Dr. Neil Hawkes on our site. Link below. Neil clearly sets out why values education is so important in primary schools nowadays. Joe Corrigan in 2016 stated in an article, referenced below, that the rationale behind PLGs is to recognise, and I quote, the importance of pupils taking ownership of their learning and having greater roles within school decision making. Now in that visit I spoke to a small group of children questioning their understanding and perceptions about PLGs. I have excluded their video images in order to protect their identity, so you will just hear their voices. Anyway, I was also lucky enough to ask the organising teacher about the scheme, which I include at the beginning of this video now.
Good morning, Rosie. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the NAPE YouTube site. And I'm talking to you today about pupil leadership groups at your school. So thanks for coming anyway.
You're welcome. Morning.
Morning. The first question is, what are the leadership groups based on?
So at Bannockburn, we have a set of 22 values that we kind of base our school around. They work on a 2-year rolling basis. And we felt that we have a very big school. It's a 4-form entry, and the demographic of the children meant that lots of them weren't in a out-of-school club. And we wanted them to have a group that they felt part of that also linked to our values. So we decided to make 22 pupil leadership groups so that every child could be part of one. And they start in year 2. So it also kind of aids with their transition because they come over in their group to our Key Stage 2 site. So yeah, that works quite well. And it goes all the way up to year 6. So within each group, there's a real mix of ages. Our year 1s are in a group, but they have a sort of a class group. So they do something as a whole class instead of coming along to our separate groups.
Great, that's terrific. And of course, yes, you did remind me, you're on there's 2 schools. There's a sort of split sites really between the old and the young, more or less. I know you've actually got the nursery on your site, for instance, which is wonderful. Anyway, how did the school organise these groups? You've talked about the age group grouping, and you've talked about the 22 values you divided in. So in terms of organisation, and I'll put up the timetable as well, so folk can actually see how it's organised and when you meet and all that. How is it actually done and who chairs it? That sort of organisation is really what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so when we first started the groups, we obviously had to think of 22 groups that fitted with the values. So for example, our Smile Squad group is linked to humour. The Move It Motivators linked to perseverance. So there's all kind of, there was a link to all of them. And obviously when we first started them, the children didn't know anything about the group. So we had a big assembly where we introduced the aim of the groups, what they were all about, and the children had a bit of pupil voice into what they would like some of the groups to be about, the aims of some of the groups. So lots of them like the idea of improving the playground, and lots of them like the idea of being able to go out of school. So that's how the Community Champions group came about. We then in class sort of went over the groups again, and they got a chance to say which group they would be most interested in. So there was a bit of choice, but also the teachers have kind of the final say in which group the children are going to be in, because there are some that, for example, the media team, lots of them like the idea of that because they think they're going to be on the iPads all the time. So the teachers get the final say who goes in which group. And it also means that we can engineer them so that, for example, the children we know don't have outdoor space get a chance at gardening club, that kind of thing. We then, in terms of organisation, once all the children are picked, we allocate some of the groups to teachers. So our science lead is lead of the science team. Our PE leads, they lead the Move It motivators. But in terms of organising the whole thing, myself, I'm the pastoral lead, and then our MFL lead, we organise the groups. We cover teachers if they need to lead a group, but we also lead lots of the groups ourselves. So we do them every Wednesday afternoon so that the children know that on a Wednesday afternoon there's going to be a group. It makes it a bit easier for the teachers as well, knowing that on a Wednesday afternoon one or two of their children are going to be out of class, so they can plan for that. And then our junior leadership team, at just before 2 o'clock, they go around and they collect the children from the classes. A member of staff will walk our year twos over, and they meet. We have a poster in the playground that says where the meeting will take place that day.
Yes, I put those photographs up. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so that goes in the same place each Wednesday, so the children know where to check. And then the group usually runs from. They last about 45 minutes, the initial group in the autumn term. That's the session where they come up with their ideas and they'll do a shorter activity. And then in the spring and summer term, they meet to do a bigger event. So that session will be a bit longer.
Great. Now, all this organisation, all these 22 groups, I mean, that's incredibly ambitious and it's clearly working extremely well. What sort of positive outcomes have you picked up from using this scheme of pupil engagement, if you like?
We found that they feel a real sense of responsibility towards their group. So, for example, we've got an international team who, in their autumn term meeting, they set out a rota of what the languages of the month will be for the children to answer the register in. And the teachers have said that they're really on top of making sure that if a cover teacher has to come in, that the cover teacher knows what language we're using, and when the new month starts, they'll go and check on the rota. So they feel really responsible for that. That kind of it's my group, and I've got a real responsibility to make sure that our aim is happening. That's been really nice to see. They've also got to know children from other year groups. So because our school is big, we have separate plays and lunches for most of the year groups. So they don't, for example, the year threes don't ever spend time with the year sixes, apart from when they do reading and things. So it's just meant that they've got to know a lot of children from different classes, which has been really nice. They see each other walking around school and they recognise each other. They also change groups every year so that over their school life they're mixing with lots of different children.
Right.
So that's been really nice to see. And the year two teachers always say that the transition period for them, they are less nervous because they've been over to the Key Stage 2 site plenty of times by the time they do the transition work. So they're familiar with the bigger children and some of the spaces in the school. So that's been really positive.
So you've got that feedback from the teachers. What about the parents? Have you had any feedback from the parents at all?
Yeah, well, the parents, they know about their child's group. They obviously hear what their children have been doing. We also upload to the blog what every group's been doing, so they can see what's been going on at school. But what we introduced this year was giving the children certificates on their first meeting so that they could take that home and display it, and it would promote a conversation between the parents about the aims of it. But the parents, they come to the events and they're really positive about it because it's giving them a sort of a different strand to school, something different for them to talk about with their children. And some of the groups, they're doing things that they wouldn't do otherwise. If different to academic work, different to our school trips, it's like another strand that the children can engage with, which is really nice. They've been positive.
That sounds all very wonderful. And thank you very much for joining us today to explain it all. Thanks a lot, Rosie. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Children, thank you very much indeed for coming today to talk to me about groups. What are these groups actually called?
They're called pupil leadership groups.
Pupil leadership groups. Wow. And how many groups are there in the school?
22.
22 groups! Good Lord, I would have thought that was possible. That's amazing. So who decides which children are in these 22 groups?
Children have preferences,
Yeah.
and so you have a class assembly, and and the children put down which ones they want to be in order of in order of preferences, and then the teacher chooses based on their preferences which one's the most suitable.
Okay. I guess the teachers also know you a little bit as well. I think that helps the mix, doesn't it, really? Well, that's good to know. And these 22 groups, what do they try to do? I mean, I'm going to put on the screen in a minute the list of all the different groups, but what do each of these groups try to do?
Well, each group has a kind of a value to work on,
Okay.
and lots of them fundraise or try
Yes.
to make the school better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one is doing, like, you bring in clothes, your old clothes, books, toys,
Yes.
and we're going to sell them to other people, and we're going to give the money to the Turkey-Syria earthquake appeal.
Right. So that's what you're concentrating on at the moment, is the
You're
earthquake
one of the groups, yeah.
appeal, which is fantastic. Oh, you've still thought of something else, have you?
There's basically with the Turkey and Syria earthquake appeal, there's actually two groups doing that together.
So two groups are doing the earthquake appeal. So you could get twice as much money.
Also, some pupil leadership groups focus on children's well-being. For example, well-being team stops bullying,
Yes.
digital leaders teaches you about safety online, and
Right.
etc.
How does that work? There's the safety on the internet.
Well, often they'll have an assembly about it, so they'll
Yeah.
meet together, talk about what they want to say in the assembly, and then sometimes they'll video themselves
Yeah.
talking and send it to all the class teachers, or sometimes they'll actually stand up in front of the assembly.
That sounds amazing. And obviously, you've got all these 22 groups. Do you have a sort of set of rules you have to follow? You know, so you don't cross over and do somebody else's work.
So we have a JLT group, which is like junior leadership team.
Yes.
They have like it's like for like more, you have to be responsible, and we like if you're not responsible and you start doing silly things, they might like take you out of the group and put you in another one.
Right.
There's a sheet in the classroom
Yes.
that says who's in it. In your classroom. Whenever there's a meeting, there's like a sign in the playground,
Yeah.
and
That's useful to know.
then
Yes.
when it's time for the meeting, some children come to collect you, and and then they say the group that they're collecting you from, and you go.
Yes. I mean, the sheet I'm putting on the screen, that also got dates on it throughout the school year, as far as I can work out, which is fantastic. And now, are you all in groups, leadership groups at the moment?
Yeah.
So, what do you think of these groups? Do they make a difference to the school?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Okay. And what about yourself personally? Do you think it's helped you in some way, being in the group, in a sort of personal way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they teach us new things and how to be nice, kind,
Yes.
Yeah.
and respectful.
And respectful. Right, that's good. Does it give you greater confidence to speak to strangers like what I am?
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
There are different ages, of course, in each group, aren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that a bonus, the fact that there are children of different ages in each group, or doesn't it matter?
I think it is a bonus because, say, someone in year 2 might have a different opinion to someone in year 6, because obviously they're a lot younger, so they might think that they want something done to the school that a year 6 wouldn't think of.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes, I like the idea of mixing the age groups up, because as you say, a different perspective, different way of looking at the world, and they can sometimes come up with some really good ideas you never thought of, I bet. And it sort of surprises you.
There's an extra bonus for the year twos, isn't there? The reason why we have them come over to our site, because we're a split site school.
Yeah.
So
It helps them transition from year 2 to year 3 when they move sites.
Of course, because Key Stage 1 is in the High Street, isn't it? Yes, of course. Now, have I missed out anything? Is there something you're bursting to tell me about these wonderful groups that you're involved with?
The teacher's ideas.
I think that's a really important point. It's come from you. It hasn't come from the teacher or adults.
Because if the children, they don't get their ideas through, then they think that...
Why bother?
Yeah, why bother? They should,
What's the point?
Like, they should just be quiet all their lives, and that's not how you live your life.
Oh my goodness me. Well, thank you very much indeed. That's absolutely amazing. And thank you for telling me all about the groups. And I hope other schools watching this video will have a similar sort of idea. Thanks a lot. Thank you.